morning. Morning. Oh, you three are all muted.
Oh,
I've unmuted you all.
okay.
Good evening.
Yes.
Hello.
So Sam won't be here with us, although he may join later.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think Anna's gonna come too, but she's gone to go pick up her car.
Okay. So hi to the bull behind you, Tammy.
Oh yeah. My a few years ago, I put together a company that is, you know, a legal structure to hold some of my work, and it's called the Golden Eye of the Bull. So I was thinking of painting this guy's eyes golden.
Let me do this. Oops.
How are you? How are you, Gertrude?
I'm fine. I have to leave straight before 7 o'clock, so in an hour,
Okay.
because I have a coaching coming. So just 1 hour.
Great. Wonderful. Hi, Doug.
Hello.
I'm just curious if someone wants to kind of lead us today.
Are you giving your stick, your talking stick away today?
Well, I just think we should decide that together. You know, I've played that role here oftentimes, but I think it's great to share it. Mm-hmm. Part of what I'm really learning.
Hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug.
I was happy to be led today.
Does anyone feel inspired to lead?
I'm always game, but I don't know whether I would accept the lead meme. I just don't sort of buy into that. But I have an idea.
Great.
So I've been spending a lot of time in these kinds of conversations in different groups, different communities, different starting points, varying degrees of sort of on the spectrum from just about connection and conversation in a different way to more purpose-driven or intention-driven. And I really believe these conversations are what we would have be the norm and the form in a transformed and hopefully new and improved world. And that this is what better looks like. This is what new looks like. And hello, Anna. And so the sort of common attributes that have begun to surface are that these are human being centered, connection centered, and in general carry a much more substantial energy and intensity of sharing, understanding, awareness, knowledge, and feeling, that it's experientially more powerful. It's experientially more effective. And the energy level of that is not something that our culture and world currently even, sort of, it's not even on the event horizon. No language for it. There's no focus on it, prioritization of it. Certainly Eastern traditions, individual spiritual traditions are like all about that, but they're sort of individual. They're sort of narcissistic to me in a strange way. They're not about collective connection awareness in the way this is. Go ahead. You wanted to say something? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate where you're laying ground for us. And one of the things that I notice is really important in these pieces, or that I would put forward, is to give everyone a chance to kind of check in and have that moment to be able to connect as humans. And I feel that missing in this moment. So I would encourage us to just do a little bit of a round before we dive into the meat of, great, Gertrude.
I would like to have that first round, a check-in or whatever you call it. And I would like upfront, I would like to, I told you about the appreciators' perspectives, that we have 7 of those. And I would like to read the one about teamwork that we created. And just to read that upfront, and everybody just inhaling it and then have that as input for the first round for check-in, if that's okay with you. Good. Okay, so a unity beyond teamwork. The otherness of the other is welcome. The otherness of the other is welcome. What is calling us? What are we here for? What is calling us? What are we here for? Jointly developing a shared intention and essential decisions creates strength. Jointly developing a shared intention and essential decisions creates strength. And by everybody freely and gladly contributing to the whole, everything gets done. By everybody freely and gladly contributing to the whole, everything gets done.
Thank you. That feels good for us to all take in. Maybe I'll just check in for a moment. Following on to our last call, I've been really feeling into what leadership is and how to be with that in a good way in a group in multiple areas of my life, including this one. So part of me putting my hand up and saying, hey, who wants to lead, is just indicating to all of us that this is not my thing. This is our thing. And I'd like us to all consider how we want to drive it. And that's part of what we're doing here. And I think that there's challenges, and that we are learning how to do that. And it's both beautiful and confusing. and not just both, many other things at the same time. And the other piece is that part of why I'm inspired to do this kind of work, where we are coming into presence together, sharing what we really think and feel, being very human in terms of how we relate with each other, is because I see that, I feel deeply that that's what we need to be able to build our personal capacities to link together, to learn from each other, to figure out how to navigate conflict. And I think that those tools teach us a lot. So for me, I'm learning those things, and I'm not fully able to embody what I feel I know to be the right way, but this is a great place, has been and is a great place for me to be able to test that in relationship with all of you in different ways. So I feel that also the pressure for me is that I feel and recognize in all of my states of being, conscious to subconscious to superconscious, that we're at this really pivotal moment of time where, you know, each thing that I do and each thing that we do is really important to deeply consider what the power is within it and how people are able to really bring themselves. Because, okay, let me be really clear. We're kind of at the end of the road in many ways, global systems style. And each of us has something to bring to that conversation and to that deep series of challenges. And I would like to participate with others in connecting that value so that it is a truly unstoppable force. And I see that potential within us. So as I'm participating in these things, this is what I'm holding and wanting to participate with all of you with, because I just have this deep sense that we have it. We just have to learn how to share power and connect it together. So, that's me. And a dog has something to say.
Anna, you are muted. Yeah.
Now you're
No.
muted again. It was okay before. Just now you're good.
Yeah, now it's.
This is the thing about leaders. You said something about driving. Not all leaders want to drive. We lead in very different ways. So, yeah, my type of leadership would be different. And to check in, I'm feeling good. I don't think I have any more to say than that. Looking forward to just hearing what people have to say. Who's this?
We've just started.
I go next.
Great.
Hi, Aina. As I said before, when not everybody was here, I have to leave sharp before top of the hour. So 45 minutes. maybe 40 minutes. And I'm not sure about leadership, but some words came into my mind after last conversation. I think it has a lot to do with intention or intentionality, with initiative and responsibility or accountability. And sometimes I get that people in certain circles are afraid that they might overrule others, that they might misuse power, and so they avoid leadership at all cost, so to say, and that doesn't bring the whole thing forward. So it's more like, do we trust enough that if somebody has the initiative and says, let's go this and do this, that we trust each other, that we don't have that intention to overrule others or to misuse our power or whatever. And one part of leadership is also for me holding space for something that wants to emerge. And that could look completely different than somebody leading the way. And it's still leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, the reason why I was saying I felt I wanted to be led today, and I kind of crystallizes what some of you were saying, is that I actually arrived with a sense of fragmentation of myself, doing so many different things and talking to so many different people in so many different modes and focuses, that I arrive here with a sense of totally incoherence in a way. And I'm thinking, well, if I were to lead in whatever content we put in there, I would probably not be coherent enough in a certain way. So yeah, this is what I wanted to share, is that I'm arriving here and I feel a bit, so I'm hoping to get into a flow that's going to bring me together in a certain way.
Well, I guess I can check in. Yeah, I'll just say I'm doing well. Maybe I'll keep the check-in kind of short. I'm doing really well, and I love, I've been coming pretty consistently every Thursday now for maybe this is the 7th week now. So I think this is really interesting. I'm kind of driven by, I like a lot of where our values are going, or our principles. I like what I see there. But I also just kind of find it really interesting too, to throw a bunch of people on a screen together and have them talk and see what happens. So I'm here again because of that. So yeah, I'll make it quick. But I could keep talking. I could talk for like an hour. Yeah.
It's Heiner and Glenn that haven't yet had a chance to check in, I think.
Hi, I can say hi. So glad to be back. See you all. So been a very good day here, and yeah, I'm also just really excited about the whole process. And the more I think about it, the more interested I become, and I just feel there's so much gold coming out from all of us, from different places, different experiences. We each have our perspectives on what is happening. And when all of it is joined together, like it is here in this collected space, we can all listen to the best we bring. And I just feel there's a wisdom that's growing between us. And I always think about many of the questions that have come up in the conversations until next time. And also, again, I have a lot of thoughts about all of it. I began listening to the talk about wirocracy with John Husband, and I only got the time to hear about 20 minutes of it, but it was really interesting. Just a few things that were said about in the last 10 years, humanity undergoing deep radical changes in living and perception of reality because of how we live with machines and software and this whole new digital world. That was very interesting, and how we kind of have to discover how to be a human for the first time. So it's almost like we're being born again. That's how I feel. It's like it's a new beginning for the human beings, and now we're coming together and joining the minds and trying to collect the best insights. So very excited about being here. Thank you all.
Did you want to check in, Heiner?
Yes, I'm commuting, and I said last week with Fleming that my thing is lead, follow, or get out of the way. But I think we need maps and shared reference schemes for that. And that is my topic. So I'm very excited to be here, even when I'm commuting in the sector. So it will be very loud.
Did anybody understand the topic? I didn't. Sorry, Hannah.
You said lead, follow, or get out of the way as a topic in terms of groups. Was that the main? Please clarify, Hannah, if you can.
Well, I try to be very clear.
We're not hearing you. We're not hearing you, Heiner.
If anybody thinks that they understood Heiner better than lead, follow, get out of the way.
And he cannot.
Well, I think that what Heiner was saying is that that's part of what he's working on and thinking about. Is that right, Heiner?
I think we should do it not only as individuals, but as groups.
Okay, one of the glitches of this, Heiner, you are muted.
He said something about, I think we should do it not just as one of these in the group. I think he's talking about it being in life too.
I try to say that it is the same mechanism of orientation and leading, knowing a goal, knowing a direction. We can do it as individuals, but we also can do it as groups. I say it like a sailor, you need a captain, a map, and a compass. And we have lost our compass for the ocean.
I heard that we've lost our compass. Aaron, did you catch more of that?
Yeah, I think I caught it. Please tell. So he said that as individuals, it's effective to use the rule of thumb, lead, follow, or get out of the way. He said that also that could be an effective rule of thumb for groups, for instance, we are a group here. He's nodding a lot. That's good. So for instance, we are a group here, and there are many other groups like us. So I believe that with that, he's saying that could be a way for having, kind of this, this fractal idea, right? Of now we do that as individuals, but then there's smaller subgroups, and then they, so applying those same kind of rules of thumb for integrating groups together.
Yes, but we also need maps and shared frames of references. So an agreement on where is now south or where is the beach. So we cannot really do leadership if we are not aware of captain, map, and compass. And we can rotate the captainship or be a pilot.
That's great. Would anybody like to comment on that? I think I understand it. I like that, Heiner. That's great.
I like the idea of rotating. Tammy has talked about leadership, and that's not exactly what we mean by facilitation, but I think by rotating the facilitator, we begin to get other people taking roles, which at the moment we're just sort of happy to sit back and let somebody do it for us. So I think it's something perhaps we could try.
Should we draw straws?
No.
Should we do random selection? Please go ahead.
Somebody volunteer. Does somebody want to volunteer for this session?
I believe Heiner has something to say. Maybe we should let him.
Okay.
You see, the North American Indians have a circle, and they find out what to do over the winter. And the women are sitting around that circle and making sure it comes to a conclusion, and they rotate the chieftainship. So it's needing a chief and some Indians, and it's needing the people who are sitting back. In this case, it's the wise old women in the Indian tribes, to make very sure that there is not too much ego and maybe the wrong direction.
Well, I think that's something that we all can do. But you said something about rotating the chieftainship. Are you talking about giving a role to different, rotating a particular role? Heiner?
He's
Yes. Okay.
He's nodding.
So, I believe he was saying that's one model that's been used, where there's a group of older women and they're the wise women, and then they rotate to make sure that the power is being spread. That's one model, but we could choose different models as well.
So are we talking about if that we can have a rotating system, that each of us can have a topic, for example, that we want to present and a theme we want to explore, and then in one conversation one of us can take responsibility for that, and then the next conversation another one can bring up a theme. I think that sounds yeah, I like that idea. I mean,
and we could rotate and decide who's going to lead the next time or facilitate the next time, and then it's up to that person, and we get surprised whatever that person comes up with, because we have so many different skills, and so I would love to learn from others, not just to do my stuff. I mean, I know my stuff. So I would love to see how others are doing it. And so they have time to prepare something, or at least think about it. So not at that moment when we start, but before.
So this is something that we could arrange on Slack during the week, or at least before Sunday. But I'm thinking now to focus on what we're actually talking about for this session, rather than arranging the next one. And when I came in, Doug was talking about something or other, but I didn't know what he was talking about. And I'm wondering if he would like to carry on talking about whatever it was.
Game to do that, but I think if I can, I'd like to pick this thread up and throw a sort of a curve. I wonder whether my associations with the leadership meme, and it's not that I haven't had eyes open to leadership in a completely different connotative meaning that works, but my association with its sort of charge and load around the industrial, which is power and authority and control, is really sort of paradigmatic, something that I've spent the last 3 years trying to figure out how to get out from under. And so if each of us individually is a generative contributor, and based on our contribution of time and attention, and we create a collective, but it's very much a collective of individuals, and learning how to talk, how to play together, how to work and collaborate together as human being centered, as evolutionarily different than the industrial meme that's gotten us where we are, means doing this differently. And so to me, jumping to where are we going, who's in charge, and all of that is sort of the middle of the story. It's like chapter 4 or 5. And that if we back it up and say, starting from a blank sheet of paper, as a group of human beings that are values centered and human being centered experientially first, how do we talk to each other? How do we listen to each other? How do we connect? And how do we come to agreement, period? Like before you even get to what we're agreeing to, but like, how do we get to a place of agreement in a way that's different than the industrial, productive, time-controlled and dominated process that's where we've come from? If we don't do it differently, we don't generate a different result, for me. And doing it different means doing it different. And the beginning of that process of us being human beings individually and collectively together, and with full awareness, values mediated, just that, before you get to the what, before you get to the where it's going, or intention, or is a really challenging, complicated thing to do differently. And starting at that as the beginning of the story, for me, is where I've been sort of focused, and what, for me, these conversations are about. Where it's not time-driven, it's not output and productive driven, it's generative, period. Time and attention contributed times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people's time and attention contributed is a generative, energetic act in and of itself. Just showing up, being here. And starting from there, could we evolve consensus on what are the values, and values as not ethics, beliefs, political, philosophic, or other, but sort of reduced basic values as a consensus that define the enactive field to come. Like whatever we're going to do going forward, everybody is has co-generated and agrees to the values that are going to define and mediate what we create together, as a sort of like first question. And I'm going to stop there and just toss that out.
How do you see this thing that we agree upon? Because one of my big, how can I say, thing that I noticed is that oftentimes in the ancient world, but also in the new world, there's a lot of energy and time that is dedicated to agree on things at the onset or as a preamble to something else. And it doesn't really go very far, because most of the time we come from different places and we kind of hang on to our little, let's say, portion of our map. And so why would I change my position in my map? And how can we construct a bigger map? But this is something of different nature than an agreement on one thing. So how do you see that? Because in the words, it can be ambiguous, that we don't know if we're saying, let's agree on a set of values, which was a conversation that we had in another session, or is it something else that we agree upon, and what nature of agreement? I mean, how do you see that? Or how do we all see that collectively? Because maybe this is what's going to start to build up what we will get to.
That where you ended is exactly it. That this is a different, new generative paradigm. We don't even, the cultural imprint doesn't even recognize that we're generating something right now. Like, we don't have a purpose, we don't have a deadline, we don't have a product, we don't have an output, we don't, like, the things that are, that run the world aren't here yet. But where you just ended is what I certainly have a vision of, which is whatever it is, it has to be co-created. Everybody, has a contribution, has value and generative contribution to make, and allowing what ends up being generated to emerge out of that, as opposed to sort of inverting it and saying, we need a mission statement, and we need to figure out an organizational structure and an entity structure, and we need to do blah, 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 which is humans doing, but it's not a lot about humans being first, then the doing second. And cognitively shifting that, like turning that, is like not easy. Took my partner and I 18 months just to deprogram and unlearn and try to like shed the imprinted coding, cultural coding. But I'm experiencing generativity in these groups and with individuals I've connected within these groups, outside of these groups, that's emergent. I'm not controlling it, I'm not steering it. I don't have a preconception, I haven't predefined. But it's emergent, like stuff is emerging. That's very real and tangible and concrete and directive. I'm sorry.
Oh, can I hop in? I just had a thought that just kind of piercing my brain. And it's that I very much do like the saying, I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald, that the greatest intelligence is the ability to keep two contradictory ideas in your mind at once, right? So it's absolutely absurd for us to try to come to write down some shared values on a piece of paper and say it's that before we've ever done anything where there's something real on the line, right? It's absurd, but it might actually be really useful sometimes to do something, it still is probably our best shot, right? Or maybe that's one way of looking at it, right? But so again, I think that it is probably very useful that we are talking about these very paradoxical things in terms of forming groups and communities. This seems to kind of be the chicken and egg problem seems to somewhat be here as well, which is it's very paradoxical. How do you kind of crawl out of the slime, right? How did reptile? So I see it as that, and I think that this will take a lot of time of kind of wading through these paradoxes. And okay, so now one thing that I do like, and a number of us have spoken about it, and I think Sam proposed the idea, now to kind of shift to something concrete, is just coming up with how-tos, right? If we address a need, then we try to think of a how-to. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that idea, but that is one thing that I've been kind of liking. But anyway, that's kind of a second topic. But I just wanted to say that part about having two conflicting ideas. And yes, this is very paradoxical, and and a lot of times the greatest success comes when you are facing paradoxes. So anyway.
I would also like to, yeah. Do you wanna?
No, you go.
Okay. I'd also like to say that I really see this very much as something unique, and that there is something unique that's happening in the world now, and my usual ways of thinking can't really grasp it. But now we're here together, and it's an emergence. It's happening all over the world, and it's a shift of consciousness, and it's going to be a shift anyway, one way or another. And today I thought about what was my wish for what would happen here. And it occurred to me that my wish is that all human beings on the planet can live happily together forever. That would be nice. And that's my wish. All people in the world can live happily together forever after, and all life forms. And why not? And this has been in my mind a long time, that we probably could do it. We can do it. So what if, well, let's say, what if we decided to do it? What if people in the world just one day decided that now we're just going to be happy, everyone, and we're going to do it totally differently, and we can try for one day. Doesn't work out, we'll try something else. Doesn't work out, we'll try something else. And this is the weird part of this new situation, that suddenly we have this option that's on the table of something so great that we never even imagined it. And that's and when I look at that option, I can't see what would stop us. If enough people decided, not just ask, can we do it, can we not, but simply decided, we decide, now we're gonna make it one global happy family, everyone living together in harmony. You can be you, I can be me, we'll figure it out. But a standard which is just way beyond what's been before. And if we could reach that for even one day, maybe we'll never look back. So that's what I want. That became clear to me today. I want to work towards that happening, that it can work really well for everyone in the world, the whole human family, all living beings. And if we could make it work well for one day, we could probably do another day. And we can do another one. And we can learn as we go along. But I keep coming back to this, that maybe the most realistic thing to do is actually to try to aim for something which works for everyone and what everyone's interests and everyone's contributions are included. And I think we can do it. Why not?
Well, I don't want to throw a spanner in the works, but I think that's what I'm going to do, because we really here need to be able to meet the sort of challenges that your proposal would bring up. And those challenges are to do with conflict. Well, we haven't really had any conflict, any real conflict within this group. So we're not really reflecting the real problems which are out in the world and which we all face in different ways in our own lives, either as internal or as external. It's not, this the sort of fairy tale of living happily ever after. It's a possibility, but it also needs to really look at, well, why it isn't happening, first of all, because that's what everybody wants. Everybody would join you as saying, yeah, that's what we want. So it really needs to look at why it's not happening. And I think one of the reasons is because it was something that Gertrude said right at the beginning. It's something to do with the other and the otherness of the other. The otherness of the other is indigestible to us. Now, why is that? Why can't we accept the otherness of the other? Because they're so different. We can accept a little bit of difference, but the otherness of the other is completely different. So we're not really tackling those sort of problems here, which we would need to tackle if your dream is going to come true.
I would like to jump in. Thank you, Anna. That was what brought it up for me as well, because as soon as something like that comes up, like happiness for everybody, everything that stands against it will pop up, sometimes immediately and sometimes over time. And I think we also have to be with or integrate, or Ken Wilber says we have to work with our shadows, that the parts we didn't integrate, we didn't want to, from ourselves and from others, that show up maybe in others that we don't like about ourselves. So, and I was thinking about Albert Einstein, who said one of our biggest decisions is to decide whether the universe is a friendly place or not. And coming from there, that means different way of being. So for me, it's not so much about there is a dream out there in the future that I want to achieve, but how would that look like if that dream was true already? And how do I need to behave? How does that shape my being, and what shadows come up and I have to deal with? And yeah, so I think it's what if there was no future? What if it's only now, and that dream needs to be true already in order to be achieved? And I have to leave, so see you on. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. I love those conversations.
I love what you said. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gertrude.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I just am curious about the me and the we, and I really like this what you put your finger on, Anna, in terms of the otherness, and for me, I feel like there's problems right here. There's issues right here that I'm dealing with, and that we are all each dealing with. And I have a sense that trying to create something that solves someone else's problem is not, that's a different kind of othering. It's like taking the colonial approach, the patriarchal approach of, oh, I can see you've got this problem. Let us just, we've got this whole system of accounting that we're going to use to help you deal with your problem, as a mask for the global movement towards extractive extremism. And, so when I'm kind of feeling into where we're at in terms of recognizing the deep truth that Glenn is sharing around, hey, there is this beautiful world that exists between us. Can't we just believe it into being, in a sense, and be in it, to practice what that looks like? And I think all of that's true. And all of the divergent perspectives that can be seen as a paradox are, giving us that opportunity that Doug talked about when in talking about holding conflicting ideas in our mind at the same time. And there's all of these different levels that I feel in terms of, levels and scales. Hi, Sam, that we're dealing with. But if I bring it down to a really personal place, I feel in my body what is happening in the world. I feel the unbalance of what's going on, and I experience that when I read the news, look at social media and all of these things. I'm living in this web of and social construct and economic construct that we're all in, and I see and feel and perceive from that place. At the same time, I have a deep sense of different ways of knowing and being within that can help us to transition. And so it's not just about thinking about it, it's about doing it, right? So my doing is to find people who are willing to be really honest and straight up in the moment and bring their skills and abilities and wisdom to the table, and to look directly at ourselves, at what it is that we each need to be able to live in the way we're imagining into. And I can say that I didn't really understand Doug, and I look forward to figuring out this sort of context setting thing that we agree on before we make, the agreement of the agreements, or, the way of coming into relationship together and deciding to do that. And what it is, I feel like that's what you're talking about. That we collectively are deciding to invest our time and attention here because we see a potential emergent value from us bringing who it is that we are and what it is that we are together. And I was reading just before starting today, I was reading some of Sam and Anna's thoughts in terms of the me that Sam was talking about, and the importance of the me that Anna was talking about. And I'm just really curious in that place, because this is not, I think a lot of the systems we have take out the personal, right? There's not a human being at the center of that. But the truth is, as beings of consciousness, we are separate individual beings that have the capacity and agency to make agreements and to do things in specific ways that we choose. And without that deep me, whether capitalized or not, the center does not hold for me. And so that identity is really important in terms of how we come together, because I am something, and that something is a collection of experiences and thoughts and intentions and actions that I've taken that is an expression of my agency and me bringing through what it is that my soul is seeking to experience and know in this lifetime. And I feel like many of us are there in that place, and knowing that there's something greater that we want to give to. And that's why I'm here. I know that I've got something to give, and what I've been learning is that everyone, well, I've known that for a long time too, everyone has something to give. And then I need the space to be able to share that. So what I've been doing is like co-designing this practice with people of how we can listen to each other, so that perhaps I can articulate what is deeply beating in my soul well enough so that it can be understood by others. And so I've just been in this place of wanting to demonstrate for others what it is that I need. I need caring, loving listeners who are willing to co-guide the conversation, such that those insights and connections to what's really deeply real and present and relevant and needs to be said and done can be said and done. So anyway, I'll leave it there, but I just wanted to offer that to our group mind and experience.
Yes, that's super important, because we all have our identities and we all aspire to things, and the me is the agency part. That's what's driving. I mean, it's a sum of me's that actually drives the we's in a certain way. Whether, I mean, even when we're playing things collective. So when you were saying the otherness of the other, Anna, I was thinking about Heiner, that was talking about the map. And the map that I was referring to when Doug was talking about the agreement, isn't that maybe what we want to agree upon, a mutual recognition of our me-ness in connection to other me-nesses, that is the otherness, and how can we, in the spaces that we hold in 2s or 3s or 7s or however, always try and draw this map of where we position ourselves in this kind of universe of agency, and so always try to explore what's in between and to enrich each other in this in-betweenness, so that the map becomes more and more interwoven, and we just agree to disagree, but agree on everyone's otherness, and work from there. There's another image, analogy or metaphor that comes to my mind when I think of all that, is that it's like we're all having a ball and we're growing, and you're thinking like we're growing our personal ball of something by adding onto it, but at the same time there's a bigger ball, and so how do you juggle between what you bring to the bigger ball and what you bring to your own ball? But then if you look at the bigger ball, how do you know where you fit and what you can bring to this big thing? So I'm making the analogy with open source production, but it's about a similar thing, that there's a merging of differentness that happens there, that we could be doing at various different levels in other types of endeavors and initiatives that we can make together. So that was what, the thoughts that came to mind.
I'd like to throw out like a really cartoonish framing of this in terms of a lens. And on the principle, I'm one of those believers that we get what we ask for. So everything we experience in our lives individually and collectively, we've created by our hand, intention, conscious or unconscious. And the first step is thinking it, and the second step is publishing and putting it out and disseminating it so others can get on board or not. And the third step is doing the stuff we do that manifests it, right? And so if that's the sort of essential, most reduced version of human inaction, my boundary is my time, attention, and contribution as an individual. And that's the only thing I have dominion and control over, authority over. I'm the master of that. And I contribute. If we're going to avert a sixth extinction, then some like fundamental principles have to change. That first of all, it's all of us or none of us. So everybody has to be included. It can't be a competitive frame. It has to be a collective and cooperative and united frame. And Glenn, this is, by the way, your vision is my vision, and I believe we can do it. And I think there are some really concrete ways to get there. So some of this is in service to that, but we have to do it together. It has to be collective. It has to be in service to the commons, which certainly requires transcending some of our evolutionary history, where we were in the build and develop phase. We're now, it's a new paradigm is called for, and the brainstem part of it really doesn't have a place to play if we want to survive. It can't be about me and mine. It can't be about fighting for resources or any of that. So if those are foundational attributes or principles that have to be there for us to turn it around, to the point of others, of the other, Anna, I believe our system, our cultural imprint, our program was designed to drive that, because we human beings were reduced to two-dimensional human doings as commodities, as resources. And so on a being level, that was irrelevant, and our being experience and existence was irrelevant. It was just us as productive units. And it served the purpose of that paradigm for us to be heightened in our isolation and competitiveness relative to each other. And all of the power structure systems, governance systems, leadership systems, economic systems are built on achieving that, creating that. So if we don't invite any of that to the party in terms of creating the new, so we don't invite power, authority, control to the party. We leave them out of the new mix. And we simply focus on collective contribution as a function of individual generativity and contribution. So, sorry, it'll stop in 1 second. That's my doorbell. His name is Leo. The collective generativity is an aggregate function of individual generative contribution. And Helene, your conversation with Tammy, where you sort of said, I wish there was this platform, this tool, this thing that took care of behind the scenes, served and facilitated all the human layer stuff in collaboration and connection and all the people trying to do things in different places and ways. And I believe nature always has it right. Like, we've never gotten it as good as nature. And that in nature, it's an emergent answer. So I believe globally, our salvation is going to be an emergent salvation, meaning bottom up, grassroots. Every man, woman, and child on the planet up. And that I have trust and faith, huge trust and faith in, if human beings as a species were empowered, enacted, and enfranchised, that we collectively could figure it out. And I'll stop there. But and the common, the thing about the other that I really want, I believe there is something we all have in common. We're all human beings. Like, south of all the belief systems and the religions and the things that divide us and create the other stuff, we're all human beings on an emotional, psychological, experiential, spiritual level. We're all the same, and we're all connected. And somewhere down there, we can find the catalyst to have Glenn's vision emerge. Anyway, I'll stop.
Well, I'm glad that you enumerated some of the values. I'm totally with you with those values, and I think it would be good actually to write them down and just to clarify that that is what this gathering is about. But there's one place where I know we tend to disagree, and it's on that me-mine thing that you think we need to get rid of. And I think Sam agrees with you on that, because we've been having that sort of discussion. And it's okay, because it doesn't matter. We don't have to agree about that. I see a different way through, which is reclaiming the parts of ourselves that we have tended to think can't be doing with that. That's going to screw the whole thing up. I better get rid of it. I'm feeling the opposite, that we need to include these aspects of ourselves that don't fit in, that seem to be undermining. Certainly, we don't like them. We think they're unacceptable, all those aspects. That's the me-mine that I'm talking about, that needs to learn to really love itself fully. And it hasn't done that. We're not at that point. And I think that is one of the reasons why we can't just step into this wonderland of happiness that we would all like. And so that's waiting to be addressed. And a lot of us are addressing it individually, trying to address it in ourselves, and even trying to address it out there. But I think that's what's destroying the planet and the species. There's no, putting your head in the sand about that. It is happening. So, while the happiness is available, we're actually, as a species, going in the opposite direction.
But the me, mine, and the othering thing, what I hear in this is that there's a whole world of different people, different living beings, and as a whole, we are one. But we're also individually, uniquely different. And that difference makes the one a lot more interesting and brings new possibilities of growth for humanity. But the me, mine, the personal part, I don't see how it could not be included. It would have to be included somehow. If we were to imagine a really beautiful world where there's more harmony, where we're living harmoniously with nature, with ourselves, where we see ourselves as part of nature, then I would think that the me mind, the individual me, would also have its place, and it would have a harmonious place, and we could have individuality and uniqueness. And uniqueness wouldn't be a problem. It would just be something which enriches the whole world for everyone. And one person which was mentioned was Jeremy Rifkin, who has some really amazing ideas about the future of the economy, as far as I can tell. And he has a video which is called The Empathic Civilization. And he talks about how the empathy of human beings over history has gradually expanded, and how now we can easily see the next step being an empathy which includes all life on the planet, and also includes the people who are different, because they can help me to learn things. I have my things, they have their things, you have your things. So we can fill each other out, we can learn from each other. So that's actually an advantage for me, if I can find a harmonious relationship with the other people who are different. I mean, they can teach me things that I don't understand. I can help them with things I do well. So it shouldn't have to be a problem. That's how I see it. It doesn't have to be a problem if we could do it well enough on a global scale. Then the differences and the otherness and the meanness and the ego and all of this stuff, it could sort of be included. And I mean, it's never going to be perfect, but it's enriching, isn't it? I mean, it is enriching to nature. It makes nature greater. So yeah, that's also a part of this, as I see it. If this my personal development is what I have relationship and responsibility for, but if that can be my responsibility, and in light of some greater vision that emerges among us, maybe that could be a direction towards harmony. I just wanted to throw that out. So.
Do you want to jump in there, Sam? You've been here and listening, but I'd love to invite you to share.
Tammy, when I first got here, you were on a really awesome speech. And first, I want to acknowledge that the sentiment is a exclamation point in my mind. But I want to also address a characterization which I believe may be imperfect regarding the me versus me, caps versus lowercase. Where I fall in this is not in either end. It's not a dual view. I am, some of you know, a very, very deeply a Taoist, in the sense that I really, really think that Tao Te Ching has a lot of wisdom. And the logo, the symbol of the Tao, is the yin yang symbol. Most people stop when they recognize there's this S with a white and black. They don't recognize that there's a dot in the middle of the white that's a black, and there's a dot in the middle of the white that's the black. Sorry, did I say? Sorry. Anyway, you know what I mean. There's dots in either section. They really correspond to the unit or the individual in relation to the universe, in relation to the Tao. And that's the sense of me that I have. Not the cancerous me, which is unhealthy, which is actually going to overtake the others that are out there, I also wanted to at least...
There is no... Hold me, Tammy, hold me back, for God's sake.
Well, you know, I think that the thing is that I feel like there is a difference in assumption that's happening here. And I think that it's good to test those assumptions, because I think what I'm hearing from Sam is that the insight that I had when you were speaking then, Sam, was that for you in the current paradigm, the way that me is in a consumerist sense and these sorts of things is a dangerous thing that has been created. And I feel that's what you're relating to. But within the paradigm that we're in here, in which we're coming at this much more consciously, it actually isn't as relevant. So to me, so it's like, and I'd love, Anna, for you to jump in, but I just wanted to lay out those insights that we're talking at different levels and scales of understanding and consciousness itself. So,
well, I don't think we are. I understand where Sam is coming from, and I've heard that many times, that people, I mean, it came up when we were talking about psychopaths, when we were talking about Trump as a psychopath. Do you remember? That was part of the same thing, you know, that this meanness, which is cancerous, is to blame for, or has been produced by this power structure that we have, as Doug said. I just don't agree about that. And so I see these people crying for help. I see them having been dominated, yes, by their parents and their parents' parents, and, you know, the schools and all the dominating structures that we have, that have taught them that their meanness is cancerous and they should get rid of it, and they can't. Of course they can't, because their meanness is themselves. It's their life force. And so when you say cancerous, Sam, I'm really sorry, but I feel it's attacking my life force, because that is me. This me, it's me inside. I really don't want to jump back as I do, but I feel really challenged and attacked when somebody, as you, Doug, also said, this me, mine thing, we've got to get rid of it because it hasn't done us any good. I don't know whether I'm making any sense, but
yeah.
May I speak?
Can
I
I?
feel interrupted.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I feel misunderstood. And I particularly feel that you feel challenged by me, Anna, in no sense in which I was intending. And it may be that there is a recognition of this, you know, yin yang, I, we, universe thing going on, but it's really deep, okay? I'm not saying that cancerous people are not to be recognized, not to be whatever. And in fact, even that word is offensive to you. I understand that. But how else will you characterize? Let's just take a human example. Let's characterize a cancerous cell. Does that cancerous cell need to be dealt with in some way?
I think we need to not go with examples that are not human. Like,
no, I disagree. Because if we go human, we're going to be really taking things a little bit personally, as we're saying right now. Why can't we not use?
I would at least question cancer. I mean, I don't know, but I think that there are many ways of healing cancer which haven't been recognized by our medical profession, because they are very sold to the chemical industries and the, what do you call it?
Pharmaceutical industry.
The pharmaceutical, thank you. There are many other ways of approaching cancer which could perhaps be more holistic, rather than attacking it and cutting it out. You know, a lot of that.
Okay, let me interrupt
cancer.
right now, because today is the first time in these conversations I've actually been interrupted twice.
Okay.
And I feel that there's some energy going on that I didn't actually understand coming in, that I'm not yet in flow with. So I seem to have rubbed a couple of people wrongly. I apologize about that if that's the case. But I don't believe any of my statements. Again, I'm being interrupted again. I'm going to calm down at this point. I will wait until things subside.
So I'm just going to take a moment to have us all kind of come together in a meta moment. This is a moment in our community where we have a really great opportunity to learn and to so I'll just kind of observe in part what I'm feeling. What I'm feeling is kind of actually relieved that we're testing what it is to have difference together. And I would ask us to all feel into how we can support learning how to do this together. Because it's uncomfortable, but geez, we need to do it. So part of what I've heard is that what I'm experiencing or perceiving is that there is a lack of understanding here.
There's an assumption being made, lots of assumptions being made.
Exactly, and that means there's a lack of understanding and coherence, but it's at different levels. So there are some assumptions that are held by each of us differently, and we're all in this. So those of us who aren't speaking, we're all experiencing this field at the same time, and so every person's experience is really valuable. So I would like to have us really kind of unpack this moment together as we're experiencing it. So I'd really like us all to co-feel what it is to hold space for this and make sure that everyone feels that they have the space to speak and be heard, because that's the action. That's the action that we need to learn how to do, is to hold space and listen and allow others to be able to share and have that open space. It's very subtle, but I'm asking us all to do our best to hold that for each other right now. So Sam, you said that you're misunderstood, right? So, and I think that there are some assumptions.
I said I was interrupted.
Yeah, you initially started by saying you were misunderstood. And Helene has something, jump in.
Yes, I was a bit surprised because Sam was kind of leading us through some of his thoughts that he didn't actually finish, and I didn't hear about cancer and all kinds of things that were brought out after. And so I felt a little bit frustrated that I couldn't hear what Sam had to say until, like, you know, unfolding his thoughts and what he wanted to share until the end so that we could discuss it. And it feels like there's some relicate of some previous discussion that's coming into the way. So I don't feel some misunderstanding here. I feel maybe a misunderstanding before, because what I heard from Sam now is that there's yin and there's yang, and there's not one that's better than the other. I mean, this is what and Sam disappeared. So, no, you're still here. Good. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share, and my reading of this. That I would love Sam to take it where he was and maybe finish what he. I mean, not that I'm posing any judgment on what has been said, but I'd like to hear the end of it in a certain way. Yeah, that was my contribution here.
I just want to note the energy field the sort of impact on the energy field of the thing, and then you dropping out just now was sort of like, like another dimension of that, and just on a phenomenological level, I just wanted to sort of like highlight that.
Well, Sam, okay. Do you wanna speak? I feel like you should finish your thought, or should we comment? Sam, you decide. I'm giving it to you to decide. Do we comment on what's going on now, or do you finish speaking? Because we could do either.
I think there's actually a metacognition experiment happening that Tammy introduced, and I think that she was interested in hearing how everyone felt that incident. So I think we're not done with that yet. And yes, I'm not done with my statement, but I think I'm willing to defer that until people sort of experience what happened.
I love the meta thing. We're going meta. Very interesting.
I was studying AI back a long time ago. There's a saying at Stanford: anything you can do, I can do meta.
Maybe I should comment what I thought. I was supposed to be in a meeting 2 minutes ago. They're running late, so I could drop off any moment. So good. Thank you all for the call. Also, I'll say that now if I drop off. But maybe one of my first thoughts was that we had nine people in this call at the beginning of the call, and it can become hard to scale, right? So when I go to countries where the average size family is 4 kids, there's a lot of interrupting and there's a lot of talking really loud and talking over each other, for example, right? And I think that that's just kind of a structural thing. So that might have kind of led us off on that point. It's just hard to hold the conversation between 9 people. So maybe some of us felt like we weren't being heard quite yet, but then toward the end of the meeting, it kind of becomes we just start throwing it out there to have it be heard. So it might just be the difficulty of that's kind of and that was my first thought at the beginning. And maybe that's kind of playing out. Hard to have a conversation with 9 people, and it builds up the difficulty in that, maybe. Which is okay. I think that's something it's okay if in these experiments we occasionally kind of go off the rails a little bit too. That's when you learn, when you see, okay, it's hard to have a conversation with more than 6 people. And then we could either come up with ways to augment that, or we could say generally we have conversations with 5 people, or we could do breakout groups, whatever. So that's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
I feel the tensions between, it's uncomfortable to talk about conflict, and I feel the tensions between really staying and getting deep into the specifics of the scenario and wanting to talk kind of generally about it. And I think that it's easier to talk in generalities, and that it's really important for us to learn how to talk about specifics. So I do echo Helene's suggestion that you just jump in, Sam, and share where you're at in whatever way feels right for you, both at a meta level and speaking specifically to how you felt there were assumptions that were made or that you were misunderstood.
You're muted. You have to unmute.
So yes. So first of all, I do recognize that I came in late, and I do apologize about that. That possibly had an interruption or a disruption kind of quality to this conversation. And so that's thought number 1. Thought number 2 is I personally was a little bit surprised in that I was interrupted not once but twice in this call. So I'm really curious about the kind of flow and conversation and energy that took place before I arrived here. There must be something going on that I'll review later on, looking at the record. So it might be trepidatious for someone new to a conversation or coming in late to a conversation to actually try and figure out what to say without the flow of the conversation possibly implying certain things that new member may not have been party to. And I think I'm speaking about me in this case. Now, specifics. When I'm talking about certain psychopathic or sociopathic behavior, behaving cancerous, I'm actually very surprised that that particular metaphor or that particular analogy is confrontational in some way, or difficulty in some way. I mean, if you look at metabolism, cancer does happen. I'm not talking about the cause of cancer. I'm not blaming cancer. I'm not talking about the cell being bad. I'm just saying cancer happens. And I'm not saying there aren't, available solutions, there aren't available cures. In fact, it's a very good metaphor, I think. There's one saying that says, if I see a gnarled tree, I don't say that the tree is bad, right? I take a look at the conditions in which the tree grew. You could take the same thing about cells. You could take the same position about people. So when I say something is cancerous, I'm not saying that cell is bad, it deserves to die. I'm saying when you look at the effects on the community of cells around it and on the mechanism, the body around it, it does have life-threatening qualities. And if we're looking at behavior in society of what right now I'm confrontationally saying cancerous individuals, there are life-threatening behaviors that induces on the community. Again, not saying it's bad, not saying it wasn't due to childhood difficulties, not saying it wasn't due to other factors. I'm just saying it is, in one way of describing it. So I'm saying that if the me, the larger me, the greedy me, is cancerous, it creates damage to the community that it's in. The healthy me, the agent me, the one where all the DNA is correct and functioning well, and it's actually plugged into the rest of its environment, interacting well with its neighbor cells and with the body, that's a perfectly viable me. And I'm not negating that. I'm not taking that to zero. That's the dot in the white. That's the dot in the black in the yin-yang model of things. And that was the thought I wanted to bring in, is that I'm not saying that me is not valuable. Clearly it is, otherwise I wouldn't be here. I'd be out, getting drunk and, try to die as soon as I can. But me, I'm recognizing has capability, has skills, has the connections that we can make can alter the course of our community. That's a healthy me that I do not want to say or be characterized as negating. Sorry, that was horrible English grammar. I don't want to be represented as devaluing the healthy me. Sorry, English is my second language. Okay, let me invoke that right now. Okay. All right, over for now.
Thank you. One little remark to that, and that is that I noticed when I heard this that I also had a reaction inside when I heard this expression, cancerous individuals. And I totally understand and agree with you about some behaviors having this effect, etc. But one thing which has troubled me for a while is this tendency to put names on certain individuals which are devaluating their identity. And I see that this is a trend which is happening in social media, and where you have stereotyping of certain people. And I mean, their behaviors may very well in some case deserve the stereotyping, but what I've noticed is that mostly when people get those stereotypings on themselves, it's experienced as an insult, and it's an indirect insult for everyone who likes them. And in one way, I actually feel insulted as a human when other humans are labeled with words that sort of imply that they are essentially bad, or because it loses potential. It loses the view of the potential of the human being, our ability to learn and evolve and move beyond where we've been before. And it's also like it creates this social role in the social landscape. Yeah, he's that kind of person, she's that kind of person, and we can't expect anything more from him and her. And it's like that social role, it constricts them. And yeah, I just wanted to throw that in. But if you're leaving now, maybe you want to say goodbye. So.
So I just in feeling into the group field, I'd love to hear from Anna.
Well, I feel so grateful to Glenn that he actually felt viscerally the same as I did, that this was sort of, as he's put it, insulting human beings. That is what I felt. And I felt insulted myself somehow, that we can call human beings in that way. I mean, I don't know where Glenn's understanding comes from. It probably comes from a different place from mine, but that doesn't matter, you know. And what I'd like to say to Sam, you know, I heard what you said, and I'm wondering how you would feel just for me to say, I disagree, or I don't agree with the way that you've put it, because we're going to have to keep with these differences. The problem is that I can't sit on it because it somehow is so, it creates such an energy in me to protect something in me. And that's something that I need to work with. And which I am trying to work with. So maybe it's just good to let people know that sometimes I do interrupt because there's something, you know, bursting out of me that just has to be said.
And I just have to say something here, and that is very quickly, that I heard what Sam said, and I felt totally agreed with everything you said, by the way. So it wasn't that, but it was just this way of expressing things, which I also noticed a reaction to. Yeah, cancerous individuals. So it wasn't that I didn't. I totally agree with what you said, but it's just I noticed that I had a reaction to that expression. Just wanted to mention that.
Well, I was thinking, listening to that maybe, because this is very energetic, so to say.
Very what?
Well, energetic or powerful, let's say. And maybe what we can agree upon is to listen and not be triggered by words, because being triggered by words is what usually gets everyone worked up and derails lots of good-willing, you know, converging conversations. And it was very interesting, Glenn, you said, well, I agreed to everything you said, but this word kind of triggered this reaction from me. We all use the words that we kind of have in our baggage, in our bags, in our brains, in our whatever, and we don't put the same load in the words that others put, and part of the mutual recognition is to you know, I mean, not saying that we need to muzzle any emotion and all that, but I mean, to deal with emotion in a way where it doesn't kind of, how can I say, yes, get a discussion to a point where we kind of don't go through the reasoning or the sharing the actual thoughts that we want to share and getting to the collaboration that we want to reach because of words. And this is probably where we can realize that language is probably what has the most impact on this otherness of the other, that we would like to bridge. You're saying no, 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 Anna,
because they are saying yes, yes, yes. So I also want to say no, no, no.
Okay. Well, language is what we have embodied into us. And most of what we say, we don't, you know, turn our tongue 7 times in our mouths before we pronounce a word. So sometimes we kind of have habits of vocabulary because we build some reasoning behind it. And I can imagine that Sam probably was not the first time he used this expression, so it's kind of not something that just came out. But that's what I want to question mark is, how can we take a step back and maybe at some point in the conversation say which words did trigger some emotional reaction and how can we work on that? But maybe at a meta level so that we continue the quality of our listening and our empathy, because much of empathy is about trying to understand what the other is saying and feeling and trying to express, not necessarily acknowledging and sharing the actual thought or emotion or whatever. It's just being aware and showing that we're aware that it's there. That's what I wanted to share.
I feel that there is a real conflict here. It's not just a question of words. And however much I love Sam, and actually I do feel a lot for you, Sam, because we have actually been making a journey together. There are real differences between the ways that we approach things, and they need to be acknowledged. And some of them may upset me, and that's okay. That's not going to stop me coming or turn me off, or, you know, I think that's part of the way that we relate to each other.
But I'm not saying that we need to put aside the differences and the non-agreements. We can agree to disagree.
Yeah, but for me, that's what's important. Not the fact that the words trigger something, but that it was something real for me, which I would love to explore further if there is a possibility to do that.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to throw something out. A teacher of mine way back when had a saying that we can either be right or we can be close. And I thought that was really profound.
Sorry, I missed that, Doug. Could you repeat that, please?
A teacher of mine had a saying that we could either be right or we could be close. You can't be both. And I mean, I resemble all of these places. I firmly believe in human beings collectively as being sentient and being capable of sort of fully experiencing themselves. And there are sort of two sponsoring growth mediums for what we create in the world. One is love and one is hate, or not hate, but fear, because hate is derived out of fear. And so I'm sort of with Anna on the idea that the kid in the Middle East who straps on a vest is a human being. He happens to be screaming in a really, really aberrant way by making the choices and doing the things he's doing. I do distinguish that from somebody who is a sociopath, somebody whose internal psychological, emotional machine is missing pieces. Connection to right and wrong, morality, and all of the rest. That's a different thing. And that's not in the frame of human beings and the potential for any and all human beings to be healed. It's just sort of like unconditional love and investment. So the outliers for me, the people that are extremists, the people that are violent, the people that are whatever, sociopaths aside, are effectively the ones screaming the loudest and deserving of the greatest resources, attention, and support to heal. And it's sort of like first safety, creating safety, second creating trust, and then third providing the means for them to reconnect with feeling, which is sort of the prerequisite to learning, right? To changing their mind. So I'm a firm believer in the absolute unstoppable power of unconditional love, backed by the resources required to live it. And the harder question for me, and Anna, this is in your frame, because I actually think where you're coming from, I am in the same place, is how do you deal with a sociopath? How do you deal with somebody who is just an agent operating outside of the agreed values, the frame, the human being mediated frame, in a human being centered way? That's really challenging. That's really challenging. Because how do you protect as a collective, recognizing that there are human beings who don't have the ability to recognize what harm and damage is? So
I did put up a video which would answer this question, which is a direct answer to this question. It's called, and it's available on YouTube. It's called how is it called? 4 Days to Redemption. But there's something in front of that I can't remember. I can look it up. But if you're really interested in the answer to this question, this was a retreat, a 4-day retreat in a prison, a maximum security prison, where there were people men serving several lives because of murder and the most horrific. And you see them relating to each other in ways that you would not believe, and supporting each other and sharing. But this is work. Obviously, if we just chuck them into prisons, you're going to feel they're unredeemable. But if we really put the work in, I don't believe there's anybody who is beyond the pale.
well,
Sorry?
I was just gonna say, yeah, and how can we know? We can't know for sure. But I'm so glad we brought up this question because I think it's a very difficult question which we all struggle with, and it's good to look at it. How do we deal with a sociopath, or how do we deal with evil people? And is there a way we could find collectively of dealing with people like this who act in a way which is damaging to the whole and in all kinds of ways? Can we act efficiently while at the same time having this basic unconditional love for them as living beings, and in light of their potential, and in light of if we could do it well enough, maybe they could be redeemed, and we sure have no reason to be sure they can't. We don't know that. We actually don't know. And they were born into this mess just like us. I mean, and there's different kinds of sociopaths. That's, from my point of view, it's an expression. I don't really know what it means. So those are big questions. That's for sure. But I think it's really interesting that we're looking at it, and I feel that there should be possible to find an approach to destructive people which can be compassionate and can see their humanity, see their potential, and possibly that potential could be realized in some kind of way, while we can also take protective measures to protect ourselves against their actions. And why shouldn't we be able to do both? I guess that's my question.
So I'd like to just jump in terms of the othering, the they, and the sense that I have is that what I've been doing personally is developing my sense of we. And so I think I do land in more in Anna's area even though I do understand intellectually what you're saying, Sam. I fundamentally, as a baseline, feel the we-ness and the need to not other, because that cancer is actually inside of me as well. And that I don't feel that it's useful rather, what I think is useful is for us to know that the systemic challenges that we've all been faced with have an equal sign. And that equal sign looks like addiction, fear, anger, being submitted to conditions that give rise to people that are unbalanced in some way. That is part of the greater we that's happening here. So yes, one could call it a cancer, but it's a cancer that lives in every one of us. And I don't know if it is of value to even call it that. I mean, everyone's welcome to call what they see in the way that they see it. And I think that that's of value. But in terms of how I resonate with that, I see the greater system and ways of knowing and being that have given rise to people, even to the stage of becoming what we've been calling a sociopath. That is just another example of our world out of balance and what that looks like in terms of human beings. So there's a part of me that just wants to kind of be differently with that question and that judgment, because there is the observation of what's happening, but then there's a value judgment that comes in when someone says sociopath and cancer, that it doesn't sit with me in a way that's resonant. And before you go, Sam, I also just want to break down cancer in the alphabet code. Cancer in the alphabet code means perceiving all that is within, perceiving the energy of activation. So perceiving all that is within us, that is perceiving the energy of activation. So Cancer is showing us, in terms of, if you look at the alphabet code, in terms of it showing the deeper purpose that's emergent, which is how I understand it, it's a way to understand within us what is activated in the world. And it shows us clearly in our biology that things are out of balance. So I just wanted to recognize that and to share a little bit of what that means in the alphabet code too, just to give an added little twist.
Ah.
May I come up with a few thoughts? Okay. I still feel very strongly that the words I use triggered very strongly some reactions, particularly in Anna, a little bit in Tammy and Glenn. And that reminds me, though, that part of why we have these conversations is because we want to have these conversations in a safe and growing, nurturing way. And that we can only do this if each of us feels safe to speak. And interruptions are a minor form of violence. Again, that's going to be triggering to some. Okay? Passive aggression, if I were to sit here completely silent, is a form of violence. And when we're in crucial conversations, as this may be, then the creation of safety for each of us, and I'm not talking about myself because I'm going to get to the next point soon, that creation of safety is what will allow each of us to express our opinions, regardless of whether the rest of us agree or not. I certainly have no expectation that anyone's going to agree with my statements. I'm hoping, though, that some of them may be useful to stimulate other thoughts in others. That's the way I come to some of these conversations also. I want people to give me stimulation, not necessarily so that I can actually completely wholeheartedly agree without, consideration. Which leads me to my next thought, which is, many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the 4 agreements. And one of the agreements is, don't take anything personally. And if it triggers you, understand it's part of your own reaction, it's part of your background, your understanding, your words. But to react violently, I think, threatens the community and the culture I think that we are trying to establish here. And again, I say that knowing it may trigger some. So I'm talking about trying to figure out whether we as a community want to establish safety. It's not assumed, I'm not going to assume it, but I'm going to put it out there. Is this something we want? And then my last point is, if I'm saying something is cancerous, I'm referring to, do we want to proactively do something to heal the body? Most of us do. Most of us, when we encounter cancer in a human, want to do whatever is possible to heal that body. If the body is our community, then we want to do whatever is necessary to heal that community. That's the biometaphor that I was trying to go for. Not necessarily biomimicry, the biometaphor. I'll stop there.
Thank you. I just have a brief comment, and that is, I totally agree. I think it's totally essential with what we're doing here that we can establish a space where we can feel we can say anything we want. And when you said that word, and I noticed this reaction in me, it occurred to me that it's interesting for me to mention the fact that I had this reaction, simply because maybe other people will have a similar reaction when I use those words. So it's like certain trigger words. There's certain words that trigger something, and maybe it's useful for us to sort of surface that and and just say kind of how the automatic reaction was. It doesn't mean that we identify with that reaction and get all upset. I'm totally with you on that. We should try to not get upset and etc. But it seems still interesting to notice that when I hear some words, it just triggers this automatic reaction. And because then I can expect other people also to have a similar reaction. So I should perhaps think about whether to use those trigger words in certain situations. And this is something I have thought about a great deal, that words that have to do with human identity, that may be a trigger word, and that maybe that's an important thing. I feel it's an important thing to bring up while we're together here, that some words that refer to a person's identity, and that even if it just vaguely indicates that they are less worth than anybody else, it kind of surfaces loads of associations to things which have happened before related with that. So I just want to present that as one way we could talk about this and mention the reactions we feel, but you know, maybe in a kind of meta way, like Helen, you talked about too, that we can talk about it in a kind of meta way, and we can bring in these reactions that we have, but maybe without identifying with them or being upset. Just want to say that.
Well, I need to say, you know, the personal is political, or the political is personal. To me, being able to be personal, even experiencing being upset, even experiencing being triggered, these are important ways that I feel I need the safety to be able to experience these things within this group. So for me, that is safety. Safety doesn't necessarily mean that we're not gonna, you know, that we're not gonna ever get upset, that we're not gonna take anything personally, that we're not gonna attack somebody, possibly. And yeah, Sam, I wanted to ask you, when you said, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me, of course. You said something about...
Did I say that?
You did. Did anybody else pick that up? You said something about, you know, we need a safe space, but of course that doesn't apply to me, or something.
No, I said I did not take that personally. I did not feel that as an attack. Your disagreement with me.
No, it was something else about the safe space, as though somehow... Anyway, we can look back and find what that's just incidental. Yeah, I do take things personally. I think it's important for me to feel things personally. I don't value particularly being able to be impersonal about things. It feels much more alive for me to be in connection with my passion and with my life energy when I'm in this group, and to be talking from that place, from my heart, that it's just really important to connect in that way.
Is it possible to do that while maintaining the safety of others to speak?
What does that mean to you, maintaining the safety of others to speak?
It means allowing me to finish my statement without interrupting me and making me feel attacked.
So when you felt attacked, it's obviously an unpleasant experience. It's not something that you would want to happen, but you are still here. You are still safe. Do you feel that it really damaged you in some way?
No, thank you for asking. But I do feel that others may if they were interrupted that way. And if I were a cruel person, I would interrupt someone right now and make the point, but I'm not going to do that. So my question is, how do
Personally,
we
I
want to
don't.
behave?
Sorry.
Sorry.
What did you say?
I said, partly, I make that point because if we're trying to create a small little group of 6 of us that just, have these conversations forever, I completely agree. It's okay. It's okay. Anna, you say anything you want with me and I will still love you. Okay. But if we want to try and grow this community and establish a set of practices that are actually going to be effective for all newcomers, then is that behavior we want to condone?
You're muted, Tammy.
You're muted, Tammy.
You have to unmute.
Oh, there's just a couple of things that I'd like to underline. One is that we haven't made agreements together. So I really appreciate, Sam, you bringing up the 4 agreements, but we haven't actually agreed to not take things personally. And I mean,
I'm not implying that we have, by the way.
I know, I'm just pointing out. I'm just pointing that out, that
I didn't hear what you said, Sam.
I named the 4 agreements because they're an artifact, not that they're agreements among us. It's an artifact known as the 4 agreements.
And I would note, Sam, that you just interrupted me.
I did that because Anna interrupted you to ask me a question, right?
No, you actually interrupted me prior to Anna asking.
Let me do it again. Anna asked a question that I just responded to.
But if we look at the record, I was midstream saying something and you inputted something because you felt it was important.
Because Anna asked a question and I'm interrupting again. I don't understand that.
No, we'll look at the record, Sam, but you'll see that you actually inputted into what I was saying at the same time because you had a sense of something that needed to be in there. Now, because we weren't in a place of not understanding, it didn't feel a way to me. But as it progressed, I was like, wait, because we haven't made agreements together, we haven't agreed not to interrupt people. We haven't made that agreement. I felt just fine when you put your input in the middle of what I was saying. However, I just want to bring that up. We haven't made that agreement yet. But what I see within this group and within this medium is that for the space to be held, people can't talk at the same time, man. They can't. The software doesn't really manage that very well. So as a point of culture, using this frame, we have each of us come to this place where we realize that we can't really, if we talk over each other, it won't be understood. Right? So in practice, we have this knowing of that, but we haven't agreed about it yet. And there is a difference between, I think there's a difference anyway, between 2 people who have different assumptions that they're playing on, and there's some tension that's there interrupting, than having someone feed in or add something they feel needs to be there because one is this and the other is this. I'm just speaking energetically, trying to create some language to express my experience. And yeah, I feel that this is going to be a really interesting one to review, just in terms of the energetics as well as what we remember just happened, and how we choose. Because this is in a sense for me, the purpose of this process is to see ourselves well enough that we can show up to be who we actually want to be. We're choosing to be here. So in the proposal, I talked about, we talked about opt-in and leadership, right? So in terms of, I think, the agreement that Doug was talking about before is that we're actually choosing, tacitly, we're choosing to invest our time and energy here together for a purpose that is emergent. So no, we're not going to, as Helene talks about, we're not going to write the whole mission, vision, values, and come to this strategic timeline of when we're going to do something, because at that point, all the energy's bled away and we've gotten pissed off at each other because we don't agree with stuff. What we have is our difference is valuable. And what is emergent here is powerful. And I just want to really deeply appreciate Anna for you because you've taken on this role that I really respect, of saying, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't feel right to me. In a sense, you're speaking the unseen and the unheard. And part of my observation, and partly from what you say and partly from just observing you, is that you're in it for everyone. And so everyone's voice comes through you in how you experience the experience. And that's really important. And it takes a lot of courage to be like, oh, look at this lovely group of people. We're doing all these important things. Wait a minute, point of process. That didn't make me feel good. And so I really admire and want to honor that courage. And Sam, you too. You are, coming to meet this moment and say, hey, wait a minute, there's something here. And you're being really sensitive and trying to understand while ever standing in your truth and bringing that to us in a really beautiful way. So I just want to, there's difference in us, and that is beautiful. And I feel like what we're doing is we're like, okay, well, how can we actually create that safety together?
Yeah.
I just wanted to sort of close the circle. First of all, what you just said, Tammy, ditto. That the beginning of the story, right? In terms of that idea of co-evolving and developing an agreed set of values, the reason it's values, not rules, it's values, not protocols, it's not prescriptive, is that underlying both of your experiences, I believe, could surface an agreed value as a principle that would apply to this, that we actually all, say, I agree. And I'm responsible for honoring that going forward. And none of our cultural precedents or current anything even acknowledge or recognize the need for what we're talking about. Like, nobody starts at the beginning of this story of human beings learning how to work and play and communicate and share and collaborate together. Like, we got to do that differently. This is different. It's time consuming. Like, if you don't turn the clock off on being, quote, productive, this can't happen. It's challenging because it's sort of like blind man, color to blind man. How do you feel into this and generate it and create it And the only way to do that is experientially by cooking the way we're cooking. Right now, this is hugely generative, at least through my lens. And is like where we begin, whatever the end point is. This is like how, to figure it out. It starts by us doing us differently and how we're going to be and relate and interact, including figuring this stuff out and going as a principle, and fill in the blank. Our values are that. So I just wanted to close that circle because this is that. This is like real deal. This isn't inconsequential. It's not academic. It's not a waste of time, and it's not irrelevant. It's the most important first thing, and I'm complete.
I don't feel like I'm usurping the floor, but I just wanted to add a very small thought, and that is that as a small group, establishing shared values is crucial. My question is, how large do we want to get? Because the larger we get, the more likely we are to encounter people with different values. Or it's less likely that we can impose our values on them, and I use that language, intentionally. Or that they impose their values on me. It's very unlikely, right? So if we want to grow and define a model of governance that's planet-wide, we have to anticipate that people's values are going to be different than ours. And we have to understand how to operate in that morass, while at the same time recognizing that we can't do anything unless the six of us or some other number agree in some way on some shared common values for the moment. Over.
Can I share some principles? Because it's like, spent a lot of time on this in rubber meets the road kind of terms. So these are sort of principles that my partner and I have played with, is sort of like how to do this and how to relate to that question. So they need to be co-created. So like everybody, it's not that everybody just has to sign on the bottom line. Everybody has to be part of the process of evolving them. They need to be non-destructive, like no either ors. So they're aggregative. They add to what's come before. We have sort of oriented around fixing the world, so they generally need to be generative in a non-destructive way. So they have to be affirmative. They have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that it is a evolving, living, growing, changing dynamic and thing in real time. And to your thing about scale, that if our generative energy, collective generative energy, is cooking, we're sort of realizing the maximum potential generativity as in between us that we can, that's going to generate a kind of pull, a specific gravity, and that the people that are attracted will need to be offered an opportunity and channel to onboard for them to get to know us, for us to get to know them in a way that's completely unprecedented. Like, it's much more important to me that I know that Anna has a core humanitarian heart center to her whole gestalt than where she got a degree from. Like right now, it's all about credentials and letters and history and story. I'm much more interested in who are you as a human being? What's your thing? Because that facilitates and helps me figure out, Helene, to your thing, what language and how I can most effectively try to connect and communicate. So those are pieces of that. But I think if I don't worry about somebody with a different value, I focus more on an aggregative biological growth of the core. And I recognize, to a couple of language things you used, number one, I don't control it. I can't predefine it. The definition is a product of the collective that emerges as more people come and the connections are established. But it is really challenging if you prioritize human beings doing this and prioritizing their humanity and how they are going to be and relate to each other and the biome and our planet in the doing of it. It's a whole nother layer of work, awareness, and that's what I got.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in Helene. Helene, it looks like you might have to go, but you are muted.
I was just saying bye because I need to go. I don't know if you're continuing or... so yeah, thank you very much. It was very interesting and great. So talk next time.
Helene, if you have one more minute, I would love, just in terms of patterns of commoning and like your area of thought and the things that we're learning to do together. I just wanted to really bring a little bit in of you and what you think about in terms of us learning how to in the, essentially we're giving voice to the weak signal.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted just a little bit of your thought on that, if you had the moment to do so.
Well, the patterns came to my mind actually a few minutes ago because there were lots of patterns here, of patterns of interaction, and the language trigger is a pattern, and we could write a pattern saying, sometimes when some people use a word, other people can react in a way where we think na na na, and I think that patterns as they are used by the pattern language community, and in particular I'm thinking about the patterns of Takashi Iba, who is dealing with patterns of human action, so describing circumstances and ways to deal with them in a certain way, but in terms of human relationships more than technology or building or construction or architecture, well, it helps to know things, and it helps actually to maybe not get carried away in interruptions or expressing things in ways that but on the other hand, as Anna was explaining, it needs maybe to come out in a certain way. So, I mean, so we could indeed try to identify patterns of conversation and patterns of interaction in collaboration in more or less big circles and see how this could help. But then there's the actual big question, and that will be my conclusion, that Anna brought up, is like Sam and Anna brought up about feeling safe, that you should be able to say what you want, but Sam was asking until when can you say what you want? So So then there are probably some things to be thought of on, you know, when does an interruption, we're talking about interruption, being convergent, being divergent, and then there's maybe being judgmental on something which has not been totally expressed, which is what Sam, I think, was the most feeling affected by. I think the question of judgment and suspending judgment is very important in the pattern, in the collaboration and discussion. So, well, these are things that I have been alluding or that came to my mind. I haven't, you know, but maybe things like that could be thought of. And the judgment is connected to the trigger, and it's also what kinds of impedes empathy or togetherness, is that the judgment, the word followed by the judgment, can actually place things and people in boxes, and so these are things that we could actually, yeah, think through a little bit more, but I really need to go now, sorry. Next time.
Yeah.
I
Thank
need
you,
to go
Helen.
too. I just want to say, please, I'm going to put that video up, and please, if everybody could try and watch that video about 4 days to redemption. And thank you very much for this evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Anna, I do love you.
And I love you, Sam, too.
I love the exit sound. It feels like a elevator to this connected universe that we're in.
Yeah. Elevator to another level of existence almost.
Are we leveling up
Yeah.
yet?
Yeah. I just,
Yeah, go. Sorry, Glenn.
yeah, I just feel that there's something so valuable here. And I feel that we're beginning to create this space where we can speak more openly and directly. And it's great to hear what Sam said about how he felt about the interruption, what Anna felt about this expression about people. And then we go through it after the reaction. And yes, sometimes there's an interruption, which is a little bit like throwing something in where I feel it's valuable. When I'm with my friends, we interrupt each other all the time. So it's a kind of natural thing, but it is more difficult here because of the technology, actually. So, but then again, if we're aware of it, it doesn't have to be a problem. And yeah, sometimes it's an interruption, but then we get a chance to speak. And as long as we have this interest in listening to what we all have to bring, it doesn't have to be a problem. So I'm very happy that we can have this open space. We can say whatever's on our minds and share that. And I feel that there's a mutual respect from person to person, and it's a common hope of something greater, a new way of communicating, a new way for people to interact, and we're really testing things out. So you have to be a little bit patient, maybe, and got to test things out. But we're learning along the way. So I feel.
I could be a little bit of a curmudgeon again and say, let's not attach too much hubris to ourselves by saying this is a new way. People have known these ways of communicating in other forums. We just want to bring next or best practices. And I think we haven't yet shown ourselves to really be able to govern ourselves, even to make decisions, even to identify ourselves yet. So we're still in the very formative stages of that.
Yes, and.
And that was implied.
And we will get there.
I just want to share what for me was concretely generative today in terms of an emergent insight approach idea of Helene's sort of beginning to noodle on a pattern language construct as a values chaser or rider. Like, that's a very real, concrete thing. And the sort of vision and combination of those things as mapping to a way of codifying or expressing or creating a reference base of collective agreement, of, you know, legacy basis for orientation of somebody new who arrives 6 months from now. And there's a reference place or for them to look or for them to check out. The platform my partner and I envision would actually serve that up contextually when the need arises. Whole different kind of automation. But so in my world and universe and doings, this is what generation looks like. This is like what creation looks like. And how it happens, like it's emergent. And that's a very different thing. If people have been used to eating steak and all of a sudden they're served this, it's sort of like, you know, it's a very different thing. It's much more biological and sort of undefined and uncontrolled and undirected, and but it's great. Like when this starts becoming more and more of the generative experience in my life, it feels so much better. Like, you know, the whole thing about the difference between work and play and what, all of that, you know, reductionist stuff, this just feels organically really satisfying in a way nothing before did, work-wise, whatever it was, no matter how mission directed. So I just wanted to share that.
Is there a way in which we see this as kind of a transition from the forming to the almost storming stage? Are you guys familiar with that model, the 4 stages of team development?
No, not so much.
Storming, norming, and is it performing?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. That model to me is sort of through an ego lens, and I personally wouldn't be inclined to invite it to the party. It's like not the, you know, for me, it's not the, it's not required. For want of a better way of putting it. Yeah.
No ego, then what takes offense?
Well, in a workshop that I teach, like one of my other lives. It's about helping people connect with the ego-generated stuff and change their mind and experience themselves without it, right? So create enough safety, enough trust, and enough time and support and presence. And if somebody's carrying that in, its effects can be neutralized over time just by giving true self an opportunity to play. And for some people, that very much is them experiencing that for the first time, right? Like they don't even realize that's happening. But that's the essential, that's sort of the essential empirical evidence of hugely polar people coming together and getting to a place of common understanding, right? That's the process. Like they have to be heard, they have to feel safe, they have to be okay, and then you can start to shift into sharing and then awareness and learning and connection, right? Like, so it's not that I don't see ego as an element of each contributor's reality coming in. I'm more interested in how can I enable the collective to know that about them and share that so it informs how the collective enables and supports them in contributing.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It sounds like it does. I was just saying that we're not there yet, right? We haven't been graduates. We're not graduates of your workshop right now. And I'm just saying that.
Oh, no. Well, I think
today. I took offense at being interrupted, and I took offense at, a word that I used. So there's still ego here. And all I'm saying is we've moved into that stage. We're trying to be that polite person that shows up every meeting and tries to grow the community. I think we're kind of transitioning to, well, I really want to say this because this is now me, and this is now me being authentic, Anna being that way, I being this way. And so some of that is disagreement, not unanticipated, but still some disagreement that shows up, and we need to figure out how to work that into our culture.
Or get to the far side, get to community.
If there were no ego, is what I'm saying, then neither of us would have taken offense, is what I'm saying.
Right.
And I think that it's also pointing to those things that we need to learn, right? So for me, it's in not taking it personally, if taking that to deep level practice, it's just actually representative of something that needs to be said and heard and understood, because it's different. It's not gelling. It's not, and our practice here is how do we come into resonance together and alignment. I mean, that's the forming that you're talking about in terms of those pieces. And for me, what's happening is there is a constellation of multidimensionality that is expressing through us that can't be simplified into something. It's just too rich, and it needs to be, because that's actually, for me, the basis upon which we come together is our diversity. So if we can develop these practices of welcoming, first having the safety, then welcoming people to come with their diverse opinions, understand what assumptions, because we didn't get there. We didn't get to testing the assumptions that informed where the disagreement comes to. Because there's something that Anna believes underneath, and there's something that you believe underneath that is informing your perspective in terms of the the idea of the cancerous people in the world, right? And I think it's our work to widen the pipe and to hold those two seemingly divergent pieces and understand more about how they come to be living in each of your bodies and resonating in each of our bodies as we're experiencing the difference. So that's cool.
That requires a generosity and a receptivity and a willingness to do that, as well as time, as Doug has talked about, right? But, you know, when it comes with judgment, which is what Helene was saying, then it can't happen, or it takes a whole lot longer.
So do you mean, Sam, that the most important thing is to have a space of non-judgmentalism, so to say, that we have an openness, that maybe that's part of
proposing that possibility.
But
sorry,
but
I did it. That was intense.
Yeah, it's good. I just sort of feel that maybe that's one of the things which could tie us together, so to say, if we have an openness, that the space has an openness for all perspectives, and that maybe we want to withhold judgment. That feels to me that's what we all sort of say.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to be that absolute. I think there's a discussion here.
I think one of the key things to bring here is respect. You know, for me, that's the baseline. Respect and love, right? Part of the reason why this experience of conflict was so able to be so palatable or able to be biologized by us is because there is real love between you and Anna, right? So there's not a, well, I'm just going to walk away. That's not what's happening here. It's, and yeah, and I do think that
both of us dropped out at one time, and I did interrupt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did, by the way, just now create a hashtag values channel in Slack, in case we want to actually get that going.
And can I also just say that this seems another revolution around the wheel of us creating ways to have a shared context, okay? So, you know, way back in the day, even before this was submitted, there were folks who were like, we need this clear purpose articulated so that I can understand why I'm coming in here. You know, these things, right? It's like, what do we actually hold in common? What is our basis of alignment? And, you know, it's interesting because we can feel it, right? Like, I know that we are in the right place with the right people at the right time. That I feel fully resonant with in my body. And it is different for everyone in how they would wordify it, in what it is actually to them. And so it's this group identity and how we choose to be together. That is, and you know, when I came into the session today, I've got, you know, a fair amount of conflicts that I'm dealing with in my own life right now. And I was curious as to how today would go just based on what is living in me right now. So in terms of my own life, it's not a surprise that these things have come up because, again, we are in a resonant field. And the things that are coming up are just expressions of what that is. And as we pull our attention together, this is the practice that I'm most excited about, is we're choosing to invest a quality of attention and collective attention creation. That's the power that Doug's talking about. That's this magical thing that I think can inform the container that we choose to create together, to further grow.
I think it would be very useful for each of us to figure out what we think the community identity is and why we're here. And if we have that, and we understand that about each other, we might actually, get something else to emerge. But to come up and say, hey, in 2 weeks, let's have a platform or plank or charter or a manifesto, just felt very artificial and very forced. And I actually much prefer this organic way of understanding each other.
So I'm gonna poke a little bit, Sam, and ask us to also put the me in there. It's not just about the collective and the identity of the collective, because the collective.
That's why each individual was going to. That was my recommendation. That was the me.
No, what you said was that each person should come together and talk about what they think the collective is. Rewind.
No.
I was listening very carefully. I was listening very carefully.
I will listen to this again, because I meant to say each of us individually create what that is for each of us.
Yeah, I heard Sam say what this means to me and what I'm seeking to bring to it. That it was an individual. That's what the version I got. But this is like, human beings haven't figured out how to do this. Like, God put this gray thing on our shoulders, and it was like there was no manual, and it was like putting a gun in the hands of a bandit. Think about what we're sharing here, and how unbelievably, on one level, challenging, but on another level, like how close to a beginning of something we are.
And how privileged we are.
Oh my God, the privilege part is unbelievable. That's the part, that is overwhelming. And with all of the challenges and all the story and all the life stuff, and none of that informs my focus commitment to this. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and this is what I'm here for, and whatever contribution I'm going to make, this is it. And sort of damn the torpedoes. But like, if the world could touch this, bottom up, it won't take long for everybody to recognize each other, to reconnect with their humanity, and to figure it out. I really believe that. I don't think there's a mystery. Glenn, to your vision, it's like, yeah, like that's what that's point B.
Two thoughts, entirely disparate. Number one, yes. The point was this, Doug. It wasn't a gun that God put in our hands. It was these big brains that we haven't learned how to use yet. Okay, full of confused thoughts. Okay,
hugely powerful.
Hugely. And I forgot my second thought.
So I just want to jump in, because when I was adding to Sam's thing, what I heard you say, Sam, was that you would love for people to do as a practice to look at what this community means to them. That's what I understood you saying. So yes, the individual's in there. I'm also suggesting that what each person brings to the table is a part of that, because each person is part of the constituent parts of this community, and that a discomfort that we have is to say, this is who I am and this is what I bring to the table. And I think that that's an important part of it. What I was pointing to and saying the me's not in there is that you were asking for us to say what we think the community is. And I think as a second part of that same process, to say what it is, who we are, and what we would like to get out of that process. So it was just adding and noting that was missing for me when you first presented it.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
One little thing which I could add to this, I was thinking about this today, is that there's probably many other people having similar conversations to these all over the world. And I feel like what we're taking part of is a part of an emergent intelligence and a growth of a new kind of consciousness. And I got visions about this several years ago, and I had a feeling that other people had similar visions. So when I'm talking with you now, this is sort of what I was told almost. It sounds a little crazy, but I was told this is what has to happen. And so one question which came to me was this about scaling. What does this mean? Because one problem that I've seen, I just want to throw this out, which may be a challenge down the road, so maybe we should be prepared for it. It is, one thing is, how do we relate to each other here? That's one thing. Then there is, how do we relate to the rest of the world, the people who aren't doing what we're doing for some reason. But then there's also, how do we relate to other groups who are doing something similar to what we're doing, and maybe in a slightly different way. And my impression is that that's where things can become difficult. And with this ego thing too, in one sense, I feel like I have a real wish to be seen and heard and show my brilliance to the world. And I think that's something we all share. And it's maybe the kind of people who do this. They, Sam talked about the smart people problem. Like, we have so many ideas, we have so many things that we've thought about for so long. So can we create this space where that can be okay? And so yeah, the me, it somehow has to be included here, because like I guess that will come up one way or another, and if we can find a way to work it out well here, just in this conversation, I think we've had a wonderful conversation today too, then we're already preparing for something that can scale, because others can see it and others can try something similar. So as far as I can tell, what we're doing here, this is it. This is the action. This is what it's about. And the insights we get here, those insights are incredibly valuable. And I'm so glad that we already have come so far. We can have very open conversations, and there is a respect. I also feel there's a respect, there's a love, there's a feeling that we all want something greater, and we all believe in something greater for humanity. So, and if in this space, I think there's also space for the me. It's also space for the individual who wants to be seen and heard and wants to, here I am, and this is what I have to bring, you know. Yeah. And then we can all learn from that.
I'd love us to do some closing pieces. I think that was a great start, Glenn. I'd like to share a little bit about what I learned. What I learned is that it's subtle but important to step up and do what feels like the right thing, and that there's no right thing in absolutes, but rather this sensing and feeling. And I feel like we really did that beautifully today. People came with their different perspectives and ways of being with their right thing. And I just really appreciate us experiencing how to navigate conflict together, and to be real with that. I feel like I learned something energetically just in terms of allowing that discomfort to be present with us, and creating a sense of feeling of safety inside myself, and co-created with the group anyway. So yeah, I learned a lot that's hard to articulate, but in terms of my energy, I feel like I really learned how to be with you all more fully today.
I'm kind of excited because in addition to the learning and the experience we each had of this conversation, I, of course, only half of it since I was only here since the last half, is the questions that got raised that are then fodder for later exploration. I mean, these conversations are case studies and real research labs in collaborology. And so I find them very enriching from that aspect. I think it's also very curious for us to think about, could this conversation have happened a month or 2 months ago? I don't think it could have. It took that long for us to get to know each other, to understand what the space meant for each of us, for Anna and I to get to know each other, for her to feel comfortable expressing disagreement with me, for me to express that myself, and for us to know that that wasn't going to threaten any relationship here. So I'll just close with that.
Well, I'm a really happy camper. There's just really, for me, really powerful resonance and connection, and I really appreciate sort of the one piece is just the intellectual horsepower to be where we are, to be giving the time and the space to what we're giving the time and space to. Not everybody's up for that. And the self-awareness that enabled what happened today to happen and be okay. And I'm really excited by like a whole bunch of convergences, synchronicities between questions asked and subjects raised here with stuff that is in a very framework, tangible, and extrapolated state that I hope to share with you guys. Because like a lot of the questions and subjects that were raised sort of in the abstract about how do we or what is, or, you know, we've probably spent a few hundred hours actually asking and trying to answer in a rubber meets the road kind of way. Like, how do we get on with like dealing with all this soft stuff? So I very much look forward to sharing that and getting your input and hopefully your help, because it's an open source project, and boy, do we need help. There's a lot to fill in the blanks on. So thank you.
Let me just pose one last question. That is, if we imagine some other group, as Glenn was talking about, there's lots of these conversations taking place around the world. If another group found us, we have what, dozens of conversations, if not hundreds now, including yours, Tammy? I want to at least point out that there exists 4 years of almost a daily conversation of 75 minutes or longer duration that I've had with some of my colleagues around similar topics. And I do want to rope them, sorry, rope is a wrong word, into this community, and imagine what would happen if I said, oh, hey, Glenn, Tammy, go listen to these 4 years worth of recordings over there because we talked about a lot of these things already. You know? I'm not doing that, by the way. I'm just posing that as hypothetical question.
It's a challenge. I've tried to just catch up on 2 or 3 YouTubes in the flow of everything else that's going on between Tammy and Heiner, between with Wirearchy with John. You know, that's a big challenge, and it's a big question. And just to add to the question, and this really, Glenn, you invoked this earlier. You know, one of the things that happened for me is the sort of imagining of there's a group that I elected to skip because I wanted to stay here today, but there's an overlap. And so there's the figuring out how we do this between us. What happens if you sort of take 2 of these and have them converge? And what are the challenges, complexities, or not associated with that? So, you know, it's something that I wasn't planning on raising for a little bit, but it's something that I'm planting a seed on, which is, you know, this is rhizomatic in vision anyway. Like that's how it's going to happen. All these imaginal cells emerge, and then they start to differentiate, and then they come together, and you got a butterfly. So, you know, I think that's a thing also. Like, A meet B, and you know, no control or power or predestination or frameworking or, you know, whatever, but just from an emergent, see what there is to see, you know, what does that look like? How do we do that? And if it's valuable for everybody, then, you know, once a month, there's the rhizomatic collective version. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. Because my gut is the legacy stuff isn't important unless it's contextualized. So the holonomic, the peer-to-peer blockchain, I'm blanking, holochain,
yep,
right? Video for me was contextualized because we've been envisioning this collective metacognition MachineWorks platform for this. And what that did to me, it sort of blew up my head, and it was like, there's a technology version of this that says, if I have a consolidated server in the architecture, isn't that an industrial control power authority paradigm? If the platform has any component that's consolidated or controlled, then does that on a substantive level violate a value of distributed authority, distributed power, distributed voice, distributed decision making? And so I don't mean to extend this when everybody's out of time, but anyway, so I think the legacy stuff is valuable, reposed in a contextually triggerable way, and the platform I envision actually would do that automatically. If somebody wants to push a button and go, oh, there's these reference things that are coloring what we're talking about right now.
These videos can be valuable in very many ways. Also, I mean, they're a documentary for what we've been doing, and it's a process.
Sorry, that was a little bit of a run.
No, I just not sure that I have what it takes to pick that up. Well, it just because it's so big, and really that's why I'm here. You know, what I see is that we have the potential to make different kinds of agreements about how our identity presents in the world, to be able to create ways for people to understand how to engage with different projects that they are inspired by, so that we can bring together this collection of both prior work and collective emergent work to be able to create that, as what my friend Caroline Smalley calls it, the bridge, right? There's a bridge from where we are to where we need to be that we can feel. And that progression is what we're in right now. So I wasn't sure whether in terms of Arthur Brock's Sovereign Accountable Commons that you were talking about each node being a point of power. Well, of course, but you are empowered to hold your own data. That's the point. And I think that these are the questions. These are the questions that we need to create understanding about, so that we can ask the further questions of how we encode our values and our ability to our values in actual tools that can represent a type of freedom that hasn't been existent here in a long time because of the power dynamics that we are subjected to. So I think that there's a deep will all across the planet, and why people are all coming together on this is because it is in the noosphere. It's a part of our collective unconscious. We know there's a better way. But what's in the way, part of what's in the way, is part of what Sam was talking about. I don't know, but I relate it also to the meanness. I've got the answer, right? That's not what Sam was saying, but there's a meanness that is in this that is really hard to figure out. So how do we share power in conversation? How do we bring forward what it is that we have to say? Is the space being held for it to be heard? Because that's a big part of it. If I see you're like this and not listening, I know that I'm not being received, and therefore I can't perform, I can't deliver, I can't channel what it is that I'm feeling because that connection isn't there. So I think that there's a lot of pieces to this and a lot of things to explore, and I'm excited about getting really specific and particular in that, which is why I'm choosing to reach out to people and say, hey, let's do a one-to-one, because I want to demonstrate what it is for each little one of us to reach out to another little guy and say, hey, I think you're cool. I resonate with a chunk of what you're saying, and I want to invite you to share that with me so that I can hold that space of curiosity and honoring your work in a way that is demonstrable, useful, allows others to see and hear, and models a different way of, it is a non-extractive, supportive paradigm. I'm going to invest my time, and I'm going to do that on a multiplicitable. It's not just my time. I'm actually literally giving my love and my focused attention. And I think that practice creates collective value. So
you're really good. You're really good at it, by the way. And your work thus far that I've seen is really powerfully effective that way. And I just want to acknowledge you for that and let you know in case nobody mentioned that.
Thank you.
It's terrific. It's really terrific.
And you know, my hope, thank you, first of all, I just received that. My hope is that others see that and want to also similarly serve. Yeah, because I think that if there's a bunch of us who are investing our time and attention in lifting up the work of others, it will be an unstoppable force an unstoppable meme that people are like, oh, geez, I can just use my Skype. I can use Zoom. That does 40 minutes. I could go on YouTube, whatever I can. There's all of these different tools, but it's showing up, being willing to nourish and nurture another person and be curious and ask the questions any regular person would ask. To be able to make it understandable and palatable for regular people to be, oh, how interesting, the holochain. That's like revolutionary. Wow.
Yeah, because if we could learn to do that, to really appreciate each other and really see each other's gifts, and then we can demonstrate it, and you can see it in the conversations, that really changes the paradigm of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who's just called that I need to also nourish and love. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful. So looking forward to talking again soon.
We're doing amazing work. And
we are.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing yourselves. Bye, guys. Bye, Sam.